Hey, Dr. King, how are you?
I'm just great, Steve. How are you?
Good to talk to you again. We're going to start rolling in a second. I'm going to come out with a soundbite from Tavis Smiley from this week with George Stephanopoulos, someone I'm going to ask you about. So I know you'll be able to hear it. And this is going to air at 4:30 this afternoon, okay? But here we go.
Thank you.
All right.
I think this is, for many Americans, George, just another piece of evidence of the incontrovertible contempt that this nation often shows and displays for black men. In just a matter of weeks, in this nation, we will celebrate the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington and that wonderful, brilliant speech by Dr. King, I Have a Dream. In that speech, you'll recall the one line that we all seem to know, not much else, but we know that one line. I want my children to one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. George Zimmerman knew nothing of Trayvon Martin's character. All he saw was his color. Something is wrong in this nation. 50 years after the March on Washington, while the Voting Rights Act is being gutted, speaking of the Justice Department, what they'll do about that perhaps, something is wrong when adults can racially profile children. Trayvon Martin was a child, racially profiled and gunned down.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve Molesberg Show. That was Tavis Smiley of NPR and PBS on This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Joining us now is the niece of the man that Smiley referred to, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We welcome in once again Alveda King, and she also, of course, is a civil rights and pro-life activist and director of African American outreach at Priests for Life. Welcome, Doctor. Great to talk to you again.
It's great to talk to you as well. This is a turbulent time, so you're doing what's very important, communicating and getting these viewpoints out. And I thank you for this opportunity. Well,
it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I want you first, and we'll get to you. It seems as though your calls for nonviolence in the footsteps, if you will, of your uncle have been followed for the most part. But let me ask you about the words of in this case, Tavis Smiley, what you just heard. Do you believe that this verdict shows a contempt for against black men in this country?
I want to answer that first, but I do want to say, let me remark on the other part of your statement. The Zimmerman family, of course, has seemed to have prevailed with this verdict and all of that, but they've lost a lot. And George Zimmerman is really kind of out there as a public spectacle, believe it or not. Some people are saying he's a hero, but some people are not, and you have a lot of comment about him. And that has disrupted their lives. Now, Trayvon Martin's family, and I'm praying with them. I admire their insistence on peaceful, nonviolent resolution as they move forward. They've always asked for peace. They've always asked people not to riot. I admire that. And so I believe that there's a contempt for young people, period, in America. And I see it in every arena. The issue of race, I know Tavis Smiley, and I heard hundreds of years of pain in his voice, the frustration of an African-American man who has known oppression throughout the decades and the years. And so I understand that pain and that frustration. However, I believe, because I know that Tavis Smiley often has followed Martin Luther King Jr., we're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of I Have a Dream. He even quoted part of that. If Tavis can remember that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about a beloved community, if he can remember that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we must all live together as brothers, and I add, and sisters in this 21st century, or perish as fools. Now, how could Martin Luther King Jr. say that if he didn't understand that there are not separate races? There's no black race, white race, yellow race, and red race. Now, the other thing is, Mr. Zimmerman is not a Caucasian. He's a Hispanic. The media is somehow forgetting that. So all of these nuances, all of the race baiting, all of the pain, all of the reopening of the old wounds, I'm saying let's pour the oil of truth. Let's come up now as the human race, the human family. Now, for those who are celebrating the verdict, and some are, that should not be done with pride and arrogance. Oh, yeah, he's won. He's a hero. The jury, the members of the jury, they're heroines. They did great. No, this is not a time to celebrate because a young man is dead. His dreams are deferred. His dream was buried with him. This is a time to stand back and say, something is wrong in the history of America. This must be a teaching moment. I approach it with prayer, with the scriptures. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Let justice roll down like waters. Martin Luther King Jr. quoted that. So all of this, we've got to love justice, but love mercy and walk humbly before our God. So this is a time for prayer, humility. I really hate to hear one side celebrating and the other side is so deeply grieved that the breach will come in prayer.
All right, and let me ask you, that's very well said, but it goes beyond Tavis Smiley, who in reality is a talk show host. Jesse Jackson, again, as he's done in the past with other incidents, to me, as a white man, has diminished the significance of Emmett Till and the shooting and assassination of Medgar Evers by saying Trayvon Martin is Emmett Till and is Medgar Evers. I mean, I don't understand that.
There's a reason that you don't understand it. I have people calling me and texting me and saying, don't forget to represent your blackness when you speak on these interviews. I said, you know what? I try to represent the kingdom of God in the first place. I try to understand that we are the human race. We're not broken into different races. There's one race. Now, racism, the lie of racism is what killed Emmett Till. And we know, we can go back and look at those pictures. His mother said, I want the coffin open.
Oh, absolutely. He was pulled. But Dr. King, for those who don't know, he was pulled out of his bed by two racist brothers. He was given a horrific murder. He was beaten. They put barbed wire around his neck. He was thrown in the lake with a weight around him. I mean, that's what I mean. How does someone like Jesse Jackson compare that to this case?
It cannot be compared to this case. I do believe that Mr. Zimmerman was irresponsible. The stand your ground should be for mature, clear-thinking, rational-thinking people. He was none of those. At the point when he was told, when he called the law enforcement people, they said, stay in your car. Are you chasing him? And then on one of the things, if you heard it.
With all due respect, Dr. King, and I've played this tape, and I've had this argument, and I've played the tape, he was not told, stay in your car. He was actually told, and this was the testimony at the trial, by the 311 operator. The 311 operator said to him, tell me what else he does. So that led Zimmerman to go follow him. Then,
but either way, now, I just don't want to try to make Zimmerman into a hero.
No, neither am I, but he was not told to stay in the car. He was not told to stay in the car.
Okay, well, thank you. See what I said in the beginning. Thank you for that clarity. When we get these points out, this communication, that's good.
Right.
I stand corrected. But he's not a hero. He was not thinking rationally.
Right.
It's very tragic that Trayvon is dead. Trayvon never should have been shot. And so that's what I said. I say we've affected the lives of two young males, one an adult male and one a teenage male. One is dead, and I am saddened. I'm very sad. It should not have happened.
Absolutely not. Absolutely, it should not have happened.
There was reasonable doubt, all of that. The case was presented. It followed the rules of our imperfect justice system, because anything that human beings do is imperfect, and that's why I'm a preacher today, and that's why I'm telling people about Acts 17:26. Stop thinking that this is a race thing between separate races. This is all human beings here. If we're still feeling that one part of our community is better than the other because of skin color, that's got to change right now. It's wrong to think that way, people. And so I know the pain. I feel the pain. I do want to emphasize this is not a time to celebrate a victory.
Right.
Because no victory has been won. An acquittal just happened. But some lives have been really devastated. That's the best way I can put it.
We're talking to Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She's also, of course, Director of African American Outreach at Priests for Life, an organization which does such wonderful, wonderful work. I just have time for one more question. There's all kinds of calls from the NAACP and everyone else on that side of the issue for a civil rights case to be brought against George Zimmerman. Do you believe that would be helpful?
It is not helpful to race-bait NAACP and all of those organizations who also support abortion, who also support the destruction of natural marriage and family. And so we need to wonder why they're doing that, what kind of checks and money they're getting behind the scenes to stir us up into racial anarchy when we should be speaking nonviolence, justice, peace, and love, as Trayvon's parents are doing, by the way. And so I believe that we need to ask why they're race baiting, because they are. And therefore, I don't defend their issues. Oh, this is race problem. It's all of that. No, This is a human heart problem. We need to approach this in prayer. We need to be nonviolent. We need to learn from this lesson so that Trayvon Martin, many years from now when we remember, say that's the time in America's history when people realized that something was very wrong in America. A young man died, and America went on her knees. That's really what I'm trying to get us to do.
Dr. King, it is always my honor to speak to you, and I value our relationship, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you. God bless you.
Take care. You too. Dr. Alveda King, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Why is the NAACP race baiting? Zimmerman is not a Caucasian. He's Hispanic. It's the media that's perpetuated this myth of his being a Caucasian. And this cannot be compared to Emmett Till. She is a voice of sanity, and we need more of those. When we come back, we're switching gears. Jerome Corsi's out with a great new book. We'll talk about it with him on the Steve Malzberg Show.